All right, let's set the scene. Picture ancient India. We're talking about a society built on this super rigid hierarchy, where your worth, your entire life, was basically decided the second you were born. And the ones holding all the power? The religious authorities, the Brahmins. But then, a new teacher shows up on the scene, the Buddha. And let me tell you, his ideas are about to turn their entire world completely upside down.
And you've got to understand, this wasn't just some polite philosophical debate. No, this was a full-on clash of two completely different ways of seeing the world. And it all boiled down to one single fundamental question. What makes a person truly worthy?
So, on one side, you've got the Brahmin view. They're saying purity is all about your bloodline, your caste. It's something you inherit. And you prove your worth through these big, elaborate external rituals. But then you have the Buddha, and his idea is just radical. He says no, purity comes from your actions, from your conduct. Your real worth is found on the inside, in things like your wisdom and your compassion. So let's see how this whole clash actually played out in 3 real-life encounters.
All right, so let's dive into our first case study. And this one deals with an emotion I think we've all felt, probably more times than we'd like to admit: anger. The story comes straight from an ancient text, the Upekkhā Sutta.
So the scene is pretty tense. You got this Brahmin, his name is Upekkhā Bharadvaja, and he just storms right up to the Buddha. He is absolutely furious because one of his relatives has ditched the Brahmin tradition to go and follow this new teacher. And I mean, he does not hold back. He just unloads this torrent of insults and harsh, abusive language.
But here's the thing. The Buddha, he doesn't get angry. He doesn't shout back. He just stands there and listens, patiently, until the Brahmin has completely run out of steam. And then he calmly asks this one simple, totally disarming question. And it's about a gift.
The Brahmin, he's probably a little confused at this point, but he gives the obvious answer, right? Well, the gift would still belong to me, the giver. And boom, that is the moment of insight. The Buddha explains that it works the exact same way with insults. He basically says, I don't accept your anger, I don't accept your abuse. And by refusing to accept that gift of anger, it just stays with the person who tried to give it away.
And this quote, it just reveals such a profound shift in what it actually means to be strong. In the Brahmin world, strength might have meant hitting back, retaliating, but the Buddha is teaching that the real victory, that battle that is so hard to win, isn't won by fighting back. It's won by keeping your own inner peace and just not reacting to the provocation.
Okay, so that first case was all about inner strength versus outward reaction. Our second case? Well, this one strikes right at the very heart of the Brahminical system itself, this whole idea of birthright and ritual purity.
Here's the setup. There's this Brahmin named Sundarika Bharadwaja, and he's by a river performing a sacred fire ritual. He has some of this sacred food offering left over, and he wants to give it to someone who is pure and worthy. But for him, worthy has a very specific meaning. It means a high-caste Brahmin, someone who is pure simply because of who their parents were.
So he sees the Buddha nearby, but he almost dismisses him, because of his shaved head. He decides to test him, so he goes up and asks about his birth. And the Buddha's reply, it's just so powerful. The analogy he uses is absolutely brilliant. Think about it. Fire doesn't care if it comes from some expensive piece of sandalwood or just a simple piece of kindling. Fire is fire. And in the same way, a person's worth comes from their character and their actions, not from the family they happen to be born into.
Well, the Brahmin is pretty impressed, so he offers the sacred food to the Buddha, but the Buddha refuses it. He explains that enlightened ones, Buddhas, they don't accept food as a kind of payment for sharing wisdom. And this draws another really sharp line in the sand between his path and the sort of transactional nature of a lot of Brahminical rituals. Wisdom, he's saying, should be shared freely. It's not something you exchange for goods.
So now, the Brahmin's got a problem. What is he supposed to do with this spiritually supercharged offering? The Buddha's instructions lead to this incredible, almost supernatural event. The story says that when he drops the offering into the water, it sizzles and hisses and steams violently, kind of like plunging a red-hot piece of iron into cold water. It's this incredibly dramatic, symbolic moment showing just how much spiritual power the Brahmin was dealing with.
And this is where we get to the crucial point of the whole story. See, the Brahmin was focused on the external fire ritual for his purification. The Buddha contrasts this directly, saying that he's completely abandoned that outer fire. Why? Because the true purifying fire is the one you kindle on the inside. It's the flame of wisdom, mindfulness, and self-control that really burns away all the impurities from within.
Okay, this brings us to our third and final case study. And this one moves away from the idea of worthiness to something even more universal, a quest we're all on. What's the true source of happiness, and what's the real cause of our suffering? So there's this farmer, who also happens to be a Brahmin, and he's having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Seriously, he's lost his oxen, pests are devouring his crops, mice are partying in his barn. The guy is a total mess of anxiety. And then he stumbles upon the Buddha, just sitting there in this state of complete, serene meditation. The contrast is so jarring that he almost mockingly asks him how on earth he can be so happy.
And what happens next is this incredible call and response. The farmer just starts listing off every single thing that's causing him stress. And for each and every one, the Buddha calmly replies, pointing out that he doesn't have that particular source of stress because he doesn't own any of those things. He isn't worried about losing his oxen because, well, he doesn't have any oxen to lose.
And this just brilliantly illustrates a core teaching. You see, the farmer believed happiness came from getting and protecting his stuff. But the Buddha reveals that true, unshakable well-being, what's called sukha, doesn't come from getting things. It comes from being free from the attachment to them. His peace isn't some magical state. It's the simple, natural result of letting go of all that worry.
So when you look at all three of these dramatic encounters, what's the common thread? What ties them all together? The Buddha wasn't just offering up some new answers. He was proposing a complete revolution in where we should even be looking for them in the first place. The pattern is absolutely crystal clear. In every single one of these cases, the Buddha shifts the focus away from the external world, things like your family line, your rituals, what other people do, what you own, and he directs it inward. The answers, he taught, are all found right inside your own mind, in your own conduct, and in your own heart.
And you know, this might be the most powerful part of these stories. These were not just clever debates that the Buddha won. In every single one of these accounts, the Brahmin who showed up filled with anger or pride or anxiety, they left as a changed person. They became a follower. The Buddhist logic, combined with his incredible peaceful presence, was genuinely transformative. And this final quote, man, it just says it all. The Buddha basically looked at the most rigid social hierarchy of his time and said, you know what? This is irrelevant to what actually matters. Supreme purity, enlightenment, peace. He taught that this path was now open to absolutely anyone who is willing to put in the effort, no matter what station in life they were born into. And that, right there, was truly revolutionary.
Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with. The Buddha challenged all the labels of his time: Brahmin, outcast, noble, you name it. So it kind of makes you ask, right? What are the modern labels we rely on for our sense of worth? You know, our job titles, the stuff we own, our social media status. And how much time are we actually spending cultivating the inner qualities that truly deeply define who we are?